Hello, problem-solving students. This is David Weber, and I'm going to redo lectures 1 and 2 and then do lecture 3 for problem solving because I can't seem to find lectures 1 and 2. I really think that I gave those lectures, but for some reason I'm not able to find them on YouTube or in Teams or anything. So I want you to have access to that material. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to do lecture 1 and lecture 2 again. And as you know, or I hope you know, what I do is do these lectures, mount them on YouTube, and then you access them on YouTube, follow along with the PowerPoints. The PowerPoints I will either make available on Teams, or I will email you the PowerPoints, or both, because one of the sections that I'm teaching, one section of you, got thrown out of Teams or something like that, so we have to make that correction. All right, so let's get down to lecture 1. Let's see if I can go through it a little bit faster than in the past, because it would be sort of a review more than anything else. But the first thing to remember about the course is, as you know, we work with a case, and we apply the tools that we learn to a particular case. And originally, the case was going to be the problem of aging in Japan. How can we solve that problem in terms of sociologically responding to it in an effective manner. But for a variety of reasons, the instructors teaching this module decided to work with something else. And what we decided to work for was how can we stop or push back against or reduce the phenomenon of the spread of conspiracy theories. And we thought this was maybe going to be more interesting. On the slides, there's a TED Talk about conspiracy theories. And I encourage you to listen and watch. Think about some questions that you have about conspiracy theories, just generally, and then ask them at any time during the course, or in email, or when we're meeting online. The first week we spent talking about root cause analysis. Now, we did this in period 1, the earlier part of the semester, January, February, and March. We talked about root cause analysis being absolutely vital to do when you're problem solving. You can't just solve for symptoms, you have to solve for root cause problems. And this week number 1, we learned a new root cause analysis process called the fishbone technique, which you may remember. And the fishbone technique was, I guess we could call it a sort of culmination of some other techniques. Both the ones that we learned last semester, which, if you remember, were basically, they're called a tree diagram, where you kind of think of all of the different possible root causes, and you build a sort of a diagram that looks like a tree or a flow chart to summarize them. You may remember that from period 1. Well, this semester, this part of this period, we're learning the fishbone technique. But we're also learning 2 other techniques, which I actually didn't dwell on before, but they're worth mentioning. Techniques for getting your mind going about what the root causes could be. And one of these is called the 5 whys technique, or it's called 5 times why. And all you do is you state a problem, whatever the problem is. Conspiracy theories are spreading like crazy. And you simply ask why 5 times. So by asking why 5 times, you go deeper and deeper into what the root cause might possibly be. The second tool is the 5W2H tool. That stands for 5 W questions, 1 H question. So the 5 W questions are what, when, where, who, and why. Or why else, I should say. And then the 2H question is, how can we solve the problem? and how will we know when it's solved? So the first, the first part of that, the 5W, is what specifically is the problem? When does the problem occur, meaning under what circumstances does it occur? Where is it happening, meaning where is the problem most visible or noticeable? Who is involved or who is doing something to be connected with the problem? And why else do you think it's happening? In the sense that the first four questions, what, when, where, and who, those kind of answer the question, why is it happening? Why else do you think is it happening is a reminder to go even deeper, however you go, to find out what the root cause might be. And then the sixth question is an H question. How can we solve the problem? Kind of a general sort of an invitation to start thinking in remedial terms. And then 7 is, how will we know when it's solved? How will we know when we've found a solution to the problem? What's it going to look like when the problem is over? So this is a good tool too. So the 5 W's and the 5W2H tools. Now, going on to, let's just imagine this. Facebook loses 1 million European users in a 3-month period, and use of Facebook has declined in Europe and also in the United States. 5 whys. Why is that happening? Why is Facebook losing 1 million users in 3 months? Well, because people don't like Facebook. Well, why? Second why. Why do they not like Facebook? Well, because they think Facebook is for kids, and there's more adults that have maybe grown up using Facebook, but they're sort of outgrowing it now. Well, why are they outgrowing it? Well, they don't like a lot of the algorithms that are used that invade privacy. Well, why don't they like that? Well, because people like to have their privacy protected. Well, why do they want to have their privacy protected? Because they want to live lives that are totally of their own consent. So Facebook loses 1 million European users in 3 months because people want to live lives on the basis of their own consent to living the way they want to live. Now, I don't know if that's a great root cause analysis, but it illustrates how 5 whys can get you somewhere by asking those questions. Just why? And 5W2H, same kind of thing. Okay, so the problem, Facebook loses 1 million European users in 3 months. Well, so what specifically is the problem? I just said it. When does the problem occur? Well, it happens 24/7. It happens all the time. People, decide to leave Facebook at all hours of the day and night. Where is it happening? In other words, where is the problem most visible? Where it's happening is, at the workstations of people of a certain age, the 20-something and 30-something age range. Okay. Next W question, who is involved? Well, as I said, people in their 20s and 30s are leaving Facebook like crazy. People in other age ranges are actually joining Facebook. Why else is it happening? Well, because we have already talked about, it's happened with this group. It's happened under these certain circumstances. It's most visible under these circumstances. Why else do you think it's happening? Well, I just have a feeling it's happening because fundamentally people are getting tired of having to spend so much time on Facebook. There's so many other social media platforms that are newer and maybe, more interesting to spend time with, everything from dating apps to other social media platforms, Instagram. So it's happening because there's a great deal of competition now. How can we solve the problem? Well, we can solve the problem for Facebook by perhaps adopting some of the features, some of the interesting aspects of these other platforms. How will we know when the problem is solved? Well, we'll know when the problem is solved when people start joining Facebook again or rejoining after, deleting their account and then they reactivate it. So that's using the 5W2H tools. What, when, where, who, why else, and then how can we solve the problem? How will we know when it's solved? Now we get to the fishbone diagram, which was the main activity that we did in week 1, the main new tool. And the fishbone diagram is if you can imagine the skeleton of a fish. And let's imagine that the skeleton of the fish is facing with the tail on your left and the head at your right. So you got the head of the fish. The head of the fish represents the problem. So if you drew a fish head and in it you wrote the problem, that's the start for the use of the fishbone diagram. Now, I hope you'll remember this from if you saw the original lecture, or you'll remember from our discussions. There are 6 categories of causes. And these categories go by names, by labels that start with the letter M. So the first category is materials. What kind of objects perhaps contributed to the problem? Second is methods. What kind of thought processes? What kind of thought patterns? What kind of systems of thinking and interacting contributed to whatever the problem is? Manpower, meaning people. Who are the people who, by their activities, contributed to the problem? Machines. What are some actual objects that are or devices that contributed to the problem? Mother Nature. Sort of forced that M there. Mother Nature. How are there some forces that are beyond our control contributing to whatever the problem is? And then finally, measurements. How are the ways that we measure the problem or don't measure it contributing to the problem? So materials, methods, manpower, machines, Mother Nature, and measurements. And in the slides there are a link, or you'll see a link or two that will give you a what's the word I'm looking for? A YouTube look at the fishbone diagram beyond what I'm telling you now. So when you build a fishbone diagram, realize that you don't have to use every single one of those 6 categories. You can use 3 or 4 is fine. I think 3 is probably a good minimum, but you don't have to use all 6. If one doesn't apply, it doesn't apply. If it doesn't yield any insight, don't bother worrying about it. Notice that when you go to the slides, notice that you've got the root causes that are on dark lines that are at an angle, and then you have secondary causes that are on horizontal lines that feed into the diagonal lines. So just kind of pay attention to that when you look at the fishbone diagram. In the diagram, you will see the word effect, E-F-F-E-C-T. That means the same thing as problem. So don't worry about that. Now, oops, my slide doesn't seem to, there we go. All right, so I got some practice scenarios here for you to practice using the fishbone diagram. You can play with the 5Ws 2H tool if you want to. You could play with the 5 Ys, 5 times Y question. Here's just one problem, one of the 4. It's the first one. The blank football team has lost more games than it has won for the past 3 years. The team owners want to reverse that. And in the blank, you put the name of a city. So the Manchester United football team, the Juventus football team, the Ajax football team, fill in the blank with whatever city or whatever team name you want to play with. But let's just pull out a name. I'll say Arsenal. My good friend back in North Carolina is a big football fan, and he supports Arsenal. So the Arsenal football team has lost more games than it has won for the past 3 years. The team owners want to reverse that. So if we wanted to ask 5 whys about that, we've stated the problem. We say, Why? Well, Arsenal is in a city that's had a downward moving economy for many years. So people don't have the money that they would maybe normally spend on tickets. Well, why? Why would they not spend it on tickets? Well, because, in economic hard times, you have to start making some tough choices about how you're going to spend your money. Well, why? Why would that matter? I mean, don't you want to have fun? Go to a football game and get out in the fresh air and support the home team? Well, why wouldn't you do that? Because it's frivolous. It's not absolutely vital. Well, why isn't it vital? Why isn't recreation vital? Well, because we're sort of taught that, we're sort of taught that we've got to do serious, most important things first. Well, why are we taught that? Well, we probably were taught that because, that's the way our parents grew up, and that's what they kind of taught us from the time we were small. So after 5 whys, we're getting to a possible explanation for the problem, root cause. Arsenal has been losing games for the last 3 years because we are taught from an early age not to value recreation. So now a solution to the problem could be to start to enable people to value recreation. And, by the way, in America, in the USA, for many years, something called minor league baseball was not very, very popular. Minor league baseball is below the highest level. So if you play minor league baseball, you actually can earn money, but not a lot. Well, for years, for decades, minor league baseball teams didn't make very much money. People didn't go to the games. And then about 25 years ago, many of the minor leagues kind of formed a collective where they said, let's kind of work together to figure out how we can get people to come to games. And what they decided, among other things, was to market minor league baseball as a family event. So suddenly to come to watch a baseball game wasn't just, well, I like baseball, I'll watch the game, but it was come out, spend the day or the evening with your family. It's cheap, it's fun, we'll have games, we'll have prizes. So the way that they solved the problem was getting to, using the 5 whys concept here, they got to a place where they said, people don't come to the ballpark to see minor league baseball because they feel an obligation to spend time with their families. So that opened up a whole marketing idea, which was market minor league baseball as a family thing. So this 5 why stuff and the sports example, it makes sense. The 5W2H, same problem. Football team, Arsenal football team. Well, the what, we already stated the problem. What's the problem statement? Where is it happening? Well, it's happening in Arsenal at the stadium. When is it happening? Well, it's happening on game days because that's when people come to games or don't. Who's involved? Well, lots of people. The players, the leaders of the team, the administrative leaders of the team, the fans, all of these people together are not going to games. Why else is it happening? Well, the economy is kind of bad there. How can we solve the problem? Big question. That's the whole point. How can we solve the problem? I don't know. Reduce the price of tickets. How will we know the problem's solved? Well, when we start having 10% increases every year for 3 years, I think we can say the problem's solved. So now we have a sense of how to get there. Now, that's just 2 tools for root cause analysis. You can play around with the fishbone diagram for the other 3 scenarios here and see what happens, just to give you some practice. And then in your portfolio for week 1, you're going to have 2 assignments, 1A and 1B. And the first assignment was choose a conspiracy theory, and I sent you some links with conspiracy theories listed. I think I'll have to maybe resend that. Pick a theory that you thought is complete nonsense. Pick another theory that maybe could have some merit to it. And compare and contrast. What are your feelings? What are the conceptual orientations that you buy into? This is all listed on the slide here. And then portfolio assignment number, oh, I'm sorry, you know what? I have the websites right here in the slides. I forgot that, so you don't have to worry about that. The websites are here that list the conspiracy theories. And then the fishbone diagram, you'll do a fishbone diagram pertaining to our conspiracy theory case. So that is a shorter version of lecture 1. Oh, and by the way, and then after you do that, you'll answer those questions, answer 2 of the following questions, which are at the end of the slide. So that gets you through lecture number 1. Now I'm going to get lecture number 2 done.